Hey dudes and dudettes, it's me, E.H. Ivins, your Uncle Herbie, the dad you wish you had, and this is the next edition of The Dad You Wish You Had. Before I get started, don't forget to click on the subscribe button and the notification button and to share this because it's going to be so full of wonderful information, you're going to want to just tell everybody about it. I say this with not an ounce of modesty, but listen, if I don't blow my own horn, exactly who's going to do it? Okay, so let's move along. We're going to talk about how to have the world's most friendly divorce today. Oh, and before I get started any further, if you're looking at that dot that's up between my forehead that makes me look like I just converted to Hinduism, a wonderful religion, not that there's anything to... By the way, it interests me. It's a very interesting religion that I don't know enough about. But anyway, I didn't convert to Hinduism. That is where I went to see the dermatologist yesterday, and he burned the mole off my face. For those of you who are getting a little bit older, you know, when I was a boy, just as a slight digression before I get into how to have the world's happiest divorce, we used to sit, I'm from Miami Beach, Florida originally. I was born at the Mount Sinai Hospital in Miami Beach, just off the Julia Tuttle Causeway, for those of you from there watching. Anyway, to make a long story short, we used to sit there slathered in baby oil with reflectors. We used to hold these reflectors up to the sun to burn ourselves on purpose because we thought that the beginning of a good tan began with a good burn. And I did this constantly until I was, well, through high school and I went to Beach High. That was my high school. And at Beach High, we were all out on the beach all the time, smoking weed and soaking up the sun. Don't tell anybody. It was very illegal in those days, but no one enforced that law back on the beaches of Miami Beach. But anyway, I digress. So anyway, that's what the dot is between my eyes. It's supposed to fall off in, a week or two or three. And anyway, that's that. Okay, let's get on subject. Try not to dwell on that, third eye between my eyes. So we're going to talk about the world's happiest divorce. Now, I have been... Just so I can set the record straight and where I'm coming from on this and what qualifies me to talk about this, is I've been divorced twice. The first time, a vicious, ugly, horrible divorce. The second time, the world's friendliest divorce, and I learned my lesson. My first wife I married when I was very, very young. I thought lust was love and made the confusion, and it just didn't work out. One day she ran away with another man. She was an addict, God rest her soul. She has since passed away of an overdose of alcohol and barbiturates. I got custody of our two children who are today happy adults, 42 and 40 respectively, who are very, very close to me and wonderful. And anyway, that's that story. Now, I remained a single parent for about 7 years. I was in no rush to get remarried. And in an earlier video, I talked a little bit about, that your spouse has to come first if you get remarried. But I'm not going to talk about remarriage today. I'm talking about divorce. Anyway, to make a long story short, I got remarried and we had two more children. I raised them. And then one day, it was all my fault. I did something incredibly stupid and let me rephrase that. I almost said allowed myself to become seduced by one of my employees, but the truth of the matter is it takes two to tango, and I was personally entirely at fault. I knew better. I got myself sucked into, no. That too mitigates my responsibility. I got involved in an affair with an employee, which is never a good thing. And at one point during that affair, the employee confronted me, the girl, let's stop calling her the employee, let's not minimize her. I'm not going to use a name. I'm going to call her, this is not her name, but I'm going to call her Joan, okay? So Joan and I conducted an illicit affair. I instantly felt horribly bad about it, yada, yada, yada. One thing led to another. And of course, just like in a bad movie, she issued me an ultimatum. And she told me that if I didn't leave my wife for her, she would tell my wife about everything. And that's that. So to make a long story short, I will not be blackmailed. And so I decided that the only course of action was to tell my wife myself. I didn't want to make a fool of her. The fact of the matter was, I thought about it a lot, and I decided that since this was a horrible thing, and since this was all my fault, and since in the end it would come out, it always comes out, guys and girls. If any of you are committing adultery on your husbands or wives, or cheating on your boyfriends or girlfriend, it's going to come out. So the question is, do you want to make a fool of them or don't you? And I chose not to make a fool of the mother of my children. She had not only been a spectacular mother to our two natural children, but she was a spectacular stepmother to her half-children, who to this day, by the way, subsequent to the divorce, after the divorce, we're all very close to this day. So to make a long story short, I told her. Now, this destroyed our marriage, but it saved our friendship. So the first tip I'm going to give you it doesn't apply to all of you, but to some of you. And this, by the way, applies to men and women both. This is not about men or women. This is a generic statement. If you've done something horrible that's going to come out sooner or later, it is always better if you're the one to bring it out, okay? I'm telling you that the day, and it's going to be hard for me to get through this without crying, to be perfectly honest with you, because even though I divorced in 2004, 16 years ago, almost 17 years ago, it is still raw with me. And the guilt that I feel and the shame that I feel, frankly, in this is overwhelming to me. So I'm gonna go slower than I usually go because I'm fighting back my emotions as I'm talking to you. So anyway, I decided to tell her, and we sat down in our living room, and in what was the single worst day of my life, I told my delightful, wonderful, beautiful, adorable, funny, goofy, loyal, solid wife that I had cheated on her. And this devastated her, of course. And to make a long story short, we tried to make it work. We tried to live together, and we stayed together for another year after that. But in the end, she just felt that she couldn't trust me anymore. I didn't blame her, and it came to divorce. Now, but we both adored our children, and we didn't want to put them between us, and we didn't want to have a fight about it, and we didn't want to have an ugly divorce. And at the time, I was a very successful businessman. I made millions of dollars at that time. And I had a lot of assets, and they were everywhere. And of course, you know, misery loves company. So of course, all of my ex's divorced friends, and by the way, by throwing the penalty flag and outing myself, that put an end to the employee and her threats, and that was the end of that. She quit a short time later, and that was the end of her story. Well, that's not true. She tried to contact me again a couple of times over the years, but I simply won't take her calls. I'm just not going to have any part of it. I haven't. Now it's been over a decade since the last time she tried to contact me, but that took care of that. You know, call the bluff. Don't be blackmailed. Don't allow someone to push you into a corner, men or women. Don't allow it to happen. So to make a long story short, destroyed the marriage. So I have all these assets, and she has a lot of friends, and misery does love company. And the majority of these friends had been through ugly divorces where the husbands tried to hide assets from their wives, and you know, it all became a fight over money. So giving this a lot of thought, I decided, and I still think this is true, it's never about the money, it's really about power and control, okay? So when you're getting divorced, the reason people fight about money, even when they're not rich, is because it's all about hurt and bitterness and power and control. Men use money for control, women use money for revenge, but in the end, it's all about power and control. That's what it is, wherever the power may lie. So, and that's a broad generalization, and of course, it can be different. I'm making just a generally, I think, true statement, but of course there are exceptions. You don't have to write me about that. It's going to be true. Okay, so how to forestall that? So I went to her and I said to her, look, here's the deal. Since we're going to get divorced, and we have children, which means we're going to know each other for the rest of our lives. When you get divorced with children, you have to understand that every birth, every christening, every bar mitzvah, I know I'm mixing religions here, it doesn't matter, every bat mitzvah, every confirmation, every Christmas, every Hanukkah, every New Year, every Easter, you know, you're going to see each other. It's just going to, you know, the kids are going to want to get together with family, and you're going to you're going to know each other the rest of your life. So the question is, are you going to make this without children? Of course, you can move on and forget about them. So this really is about having a happy divorce with children, although the same principles will apply without children, and I'll get into that at the very end. So to make a long story short, here's what I proposed to her. I sat down with her and I said, look, here's the deal. You pick two people, two professionals, okay? Pick the lawyer and pick a forensic accountant. Now, forensic, for those of you who watch the CSI shows on TV, you know, that's the guys, the crime scene investigators, but there are also people called forensic accountants. Accountants who can look at balance sheets and assets and so on and so forth and determine if anybody's lying because of ratios and relationships of numbers and so on and so forth. I'm not going to get into accounting, but it's true. Okay, so, and they're very, very good. So she said she didn't know any, and I said, look, I'll give you a list of referrals of attorneys and accountants in the city. We lived in Tucson, Arizona at the time. I knew Tucson's a city of about 1 million people, but the business community is relatively small. So I knew all the accountants and all the attorneys after living there for decades and being big in business there, being a big fish in a comparatively small pond. So I gave her a list. I didn't tell her which ones I liked or didn't like, or which ones, were good or bad or otherwise. I left it to her. You pick the lawyer. I got a list of all the best divorce lawyers in Tucson and all the best forensic accountants, and they were very, very good ones. And in Phoenix, too, I gave her a long list and said, pick who you want. I won't hire another lawyer. We'll share the lawyer, which, of course, we'll pay for out of our joint estate, which, at the time, by the way, she was a homemaker and I was the money provider, but it was our money. I always viewed it as our money. By the way, as a slight digression, this his and her thing after you've been married, look, even in a traditional family setup where the husband is going to be the provider and the wife is the homemaker and the child primary I should say child rearer, it's still you can't have one without the other. If no one has your back, you can't build your estate. I mean, I always knew that my success was at least 50% attributable to Terry, my ex-wife, because she had my back. She was loyal. She went with me to functions. She was charming. She engaged with people I did business with. She made me feel secure. The most important thing was I always felt secure about my home life, which gave me the security to pursue my professional life. So I didn't view it, and if you get married in one of these situations, slight digression, and it's hers and ours and mine, don't get married. Okay, it's either ours or don't do it. If you can't honestly look in the mirror and say it's all of ours together. Now, later in life marriages, when you're my age, is a different story. If I got married today to a woman my age, and she had her estate and I had mine, we wouldn't mix the assets because she would have her children and I would have my children, and that would be silly. But it would be even sillier to get married at my age because we're not going to have children. And in my view anyway, the only reason for marriage is to have children. So I wouldn't get married at this stage in my life. But having said that, so let's go back to the subject matter at hand. So she picked the lawyer, a very nice woman, and she picked a forensic accountant, a guy that I knew actually, but just socially, not really, really well. And I opened up everything to him, and he went through all of my assets and confirmed to her that I wasn't lying about where our money was and how much there was. And it took him about a month to do the audit. And it, unlike President Trump's multi-year audit, my audit only took, a month. And they went through everything, and he went through everything, and he came in, really. It was really like a very thorough physical examination by the best doctor you could ever imagine. And he provided Terry a list of our assets and our debts. And so she had a very clear picture of what our finances were. And so we decided, and my proposal to her was, let's divide the assets 50-50 right down the middle. And let's share custody of the children. And let's treat each other with ultimate respect and swear to each other that we will never say a negative word about the other in front of the children. We did all of those things. We had one attorney, we divided our assets, and in my case, we were talking millions of dollars. Now, I only bring this up not to brag, but because there was a lot of money involved, and I know because I go into the Facebook groups and things of divorce groups because I'm promoting the podcast and so on and so forth, and I see people, and this fighting over money, let me tell you, you can always make more money. And the more you try to hold on to money, the less you're going to be able to hold on to it. And it's just going to destroy your lives. Don't fight over money. What's more important, your children or money? You can always make more money. Men or women both. You can always make more money. So just don't get in. Look, in the end, in a no-fault divorce state, I live in Arizona, which is a no-fault divorce state. Most states, I think, if not all states, are no-fault divorce states, which means that it doesn't matter what the reason for your divorce is. It doesn't matter what he did or she did. It doesn't matter what the background is. You are the parents of children. You are going to share them and raise them, and so therefore you should divide your assets down the middle because you built them together. Okay, whether who was employed and who was at home providing the support, you can't build a house on no foundation. Don't get into that argument. Simply divide the assets down the middle 50-50. It's extremely important. Do not use money as a control issue. Okay, divide it. Pension plans, IRAs, don't get cute. Don't try to hide. Don't move assets. Don't put it in other people's names. Don't make what are called fraudulent conveyances and move things into relatives' names and all the tricks that people use, because all you're doing is poisoning your children's future. I promise you. Divide it up. Just cut the check, call it a day. Or, you can't really cut a check for the kind of assets we had, but we had real estate and houses and blah, blah, blah. But we divided it all up. Okay, so 50-50 down the middle, end of story. I also agreed to pay her alimony. Why did I agree to pay alimony? And a very generous alimony, because A, she's the mother of my children, and B, she hadn't worked for years. So therefore, men and women, it just as an aside, do get the same pay for the same job. You know, the people that say they don't understand statistics, but a lot of women don't make as much money as men because they've been out of the workforce for a long time, and that distorts that picture. But the bottom line is Terry, who was a physical therapist by training, hadn't been in physical therapy for about 15 years. So for her to get started again and if she went back to work, would take a long time. Plus, it would take time away from the kids. And since I had the financial wherewithal, I agreed to pay alimony and child support and have the primary residence of the children her house. And I bought a second house about 3/4 of a mile away so the kids could even walk to my house if they felt like it. We shared custody. Now, look, I understand that everyone's financial situation is different, and I'm not going to tell you the amount of alimony I paid because, frankly, it's irrelevant because everyone's finances are different. But I agreed to pay alimony until both children had reached their 18th birthday. And at the time, they were, I'm going to say, 6 and 10 respectively. And is that right? Yes, they were 6 and 10 respectively. And at the very same time, I didn't want Terry to go back to work. And in our situation, we had that option. In the case of those of you who perhaps don't have those kind of assets, I understand completely. Here's what you do. You supplement your ex's income if you're the primary wage earner, and today it could be the man or the woman who's the primary wage earner, God knows, so that they can remain at home and take care of the kids as they had before the divorce. If at all possible, you want to maintain as little disruption in home life as possible. So I agreed to pay alimony and child support until the children reached their 18th birthday. Actually, child support till they reached their 18th birthday, alimony until she remarried. Now, and if that was the rest of our lives, then that's the rest of our lives. I just didn't care. Now, she did in fact remarry, and interestingly enough, and I realize as I'm going to tell you this, you're going to think this was a plot, but she's actually married to a man that I fixed her up with. Our relationship was so good that we maintained our friendship because I didn't jerk her around. That was a fly flying by that. I'm just swatted him again. I didn't jerk him around. I didn't jerk her around. I didn't hide money. I didn't hire a different lawyer. We didn't fight. So all of that was out of the picture. It just became a question of moving forward. How are we going to handle things? And I felt that I wanted to maintain things with as little disruption as possible. Now, again, it's going to depend upon money and what your situation is. But as much as possible, whoever the primary wage earner is should provide additional support to the non-primary wage earner so the children in particular are not affected. And then down the road, when they remarry, be happy for them. To this day, we get together for holidays and everything else. And I obviously know this guy really well because I fixed my ex up with him. And, you know, we have a great relationship and a friendship. And that doesn't detract. Look, I won't live long enough for me to not stop feeling the shame that I feel over what I did because I had it all. I had a terrific marriage to a terrific woman with terrific kids, and I screwed it up because I cheated, which is ironic since my first wife cheated on me. It's just too long a story to get into the psychology of that. We're human beings, we do terrible things. But the worst thing I could have done was to allow that to degrade, or at least to participate in allowing it to degrade into bitterness and anger and acrimony. And a hard divorce, you know, people tell themselves, in the process of our divorce, you know, in Arizona it was required that since there were children involved in the divorce, we had to go take parenting classes. We tried to get out of them. We went to our joint lawyer and said, look, we have no argument about our children and about custody, but they were mandatory. So anyway, and then we asked if we could take them together, because weirdly enough, by the time we got to the actual divorce, we were very, very friendly. You know, we still make each other's, the one thing we always had going for us is we make each other laugh. So we thought maybe we could go to the class together and just knock it out. And she said, no, you have to go separately. That's the rules. And so, I mean, if you think about it, it's probably a good rule. I mean, very few people were as friendly as we were. So I went to my class, she went to hers. And in my class, I mean, it was so revealing. And I see it all the time to this day, and I'm sure you've seen it too, or maybe you're living through it, the bitterness and the acrimony and the anger and the hate and the horrible things said and the horrible pejorative words, the C word for women and the F word for men and all the terrible things. And you know, people get their kids in the middle of this and they try to make their kids see their side of it, and they try to get their kids to be on the... Look, you are not your children's friend, okay? You are their parent. Your job, your most important job, more important than your career, more important than your feelings, more important than your dating life, more important than anything you could imagine, is raising healthy children. And it's impossible if you put them in the middle of a divorce. So if you must get divorced, and I'm going to tell you in 2020 hindsight, I'm sorry that we got divorced. The only thing that I regret in the entire process is not trying even harder to persuade Terry to take me back. Not because I deserve forgiveness, but it would have been better for the children for us to, because as great as it was, it still has had some effect on the children. And we have a very open relationship, and we've all sought counseling in the course of this. I can't tell you strongly enough how much I feel that you should seek counseling as you go through a divorce, even if you're doing the world's friendliest divorces we did. And when I say counseling, I mean with a psychologist or a psychiatrist. I don't mess around with social workers and so-called counselors and stuff like that, because so many of those people are basically messed up people themselves who go into that because they just get wrapped up in the messed up world of messed up psychology, and they don't take the time to go all the way through the schooling and get the necessary certifications to be at the top of their game. And to me, that's like going to a witch doctor instead of a doctor. Just my opinion. So if I were you, I would go see a psychologist and get the children in with a child psychologist and spend the money and do it all the way through, because there are going to be wounds even in a friendly divorce ongoing, and it's going to help everybody involved. So, and the key to never forget, it's all about the children. I don't care if you have to take a picture of your children and glue it to the dashboard of your car and put it on your desk and put it beside your bed and put it in the bathroom mirror to remind you everywhere that you go and everywhere that you look that this is all about the children. It's not about your hurt feelings. It's not about what he or she did to you. It's not. Look, there's always a reason why people do things, okay? There was a reason why I cheated. It wasn't Terry's fault. It has to do with a compulsion from childhood, which I'm not going to get into today, maybe some other time. But the fact of the matter is, it doesn't just happen. You know, when I ever hear the story, you know, it just happened. What, did a hurricane come up out of nowhere, blow your clothes off, you fell into each other and had sex accidentally? I mean, that's the silliest thing I've ever heard. It never happens. That's why I don't want to say that I was seduced. I allowed myself to be seduced. I wanted to be seduced. This secretary was, on a scale of 1 to 10, a 15, you know, and you know, I probably never should have hired her. It was a terrible, terrible series of decisions that I made and I'm responsible for, okay? But I didn't make them because I was trying to hurt Terry. I made them because I was messed up. I was a dented can, to use an analogy. So to say that, or is that a metaphor? Anyway, but I never get that straight. But anyway, the point of the matter is, you get it. The point of the matter is, there's always a reason. For example, if you're a man and your wife is cheating on you, it's almost certainly because you've been ignoring her. I mean, look, if a woman isn't made to feel attractive by the man she lives with, if you don't remind your wife all the time that she's beautiful and sexy and attractive and desirable, sooner or later some guy's going to come along that will. And I'm being broadly general, but this is broadly I mean, I understand there are sex addicts, and that's a different story for a different day. But I'm talking among relatively normal people, whatever that means. The usual reason that women cheat is because their husbands ignore them. Their husbands are going to work and, you know, living, you know, are all wrapped up in career. And men cheat largely for the same reason. I mean, if men aren't getting their needs satisfied, they're going to seek it elsewhere. Now, that's not why I did it, by the way. Mine was a compulsion, which is a whole different story. But that's generally why. Or you're married to a hound dog, but that's usually multiple adultery, and they end up having lots of girlfriends, and that's an ugly story for later. But in our case, I really wish on this single instance of adultery, I would have fought harder to keep our marriage together. That is a regret. And I really don't like regrets, because you can't unring a bell once it's rung, but it goes through my head. You know, I'm a human being like any other, and while I can give you very good advice, a lot of this advice is based on, you know, good decisions come from experience, but experience comes from bad decisions. So I share this all with you because I have made some bad decisions, and I want you to have a happy divorce. And I see, and it's very, very important, male or female, man or woman, boy or girl, gay or straight, it doesn't matter. You have got, if there are children involved, you have got to find a way. And my suggestion is, share a lawyer, open yourself up to an accounting, split everything 50-50, and don't be cheap with money. Don't use money for control. It's your best chance for a happy divorce. Okay, now, that's married couples. Now let's talk about unmarried couples for a minute. And I'm going to share a story just to give you a little background on this, because this is going to be much simpler and quicker. I had a very good friend. His name was Mike. That was his real name. I'm not going to use his last name. And Mike was an airplane salesman. I'm a pilot. I've been flying since I was 17 years old. And Mike was a guy that I bought a total of 2 airplanes from over a course of a period of years. And when I say airplanes, I'm not talking jets here. I'm talking about single-engine airplanes. I just fly for joy and fun, and I take occasional cross-country trips. But and I have thousands of hours, and I'm an instrument-rated pilot. But that's just an aside. I only mention it for those of you that are pilots out there. Put 2 pilots together. We have lots to talk about. But anyway, Mike was my airplane salesman, and he used to stop in to see me all the time. And when he was in town, when he would, breeze through Tucson, selling planes to other people, so on and so forth, and he was going through a divorce, and they didn't have children. His wife, interestingly enough, was a lawyer, although not a divorce lawyer, and he was what I told you was. He was also a champion water skier and a champion bicyclist. He was a big bike racer. And anyway, he had this bike that he had custom made. He paid over $10,000 for it. It was composite and it was light. And I don't know, I'm not a bicyclist except for fun. So I don't know all the rules and why this was a great bike, but this was a great custom made bike, evidently. And she wanted it. Now, obviously she wanted it out of spite, and because she wasn't a cyclist. It was just part of the divorce, and they were fighting over it. And he was sharing with me this entire story. And he said to me, "What would you do if you were me? I don't want it, that's my bike. She wouldn't even appreciate it. It would just sit in the garage. It would just hang from a rack on the roof. And, she'd never ride it. She's just doing this to spite me. And and I'm not going to give it to her." And I said, "Mike, give her the bike." Now, I said it a little more colorfully. Okay, I'll be honest with you. I threw the F word in between there. I said, "Give her the effing bike." And my reasoning was very simple. I said, "Mike, you can always get another bike, and this is going to end up costing you more than the $10,000 you spent for this bike and lawyer's fees to fight her for the bike. Look, man, this isn't, no one's going to keep score on this. Okay, so she wins. So she gets the bike. She wins, you lose. So what? Move on. Get on with your life." And that's my advice to those of you who are getting divorced without children. Look, if your spouse is trying to get something that you really, really want, and you have a million reasons why he or she shouldn't have it, and, they don't really want, but let it go. Give them the effing thing, okay? That's the only thing I can tell you. Give them the effing thing. It's just a thing. It's just a possession. It's just an object. Okay, it has nothing to do with anything. You're never going to have to see them again for the rest of your life. Get it over with. Pull it off like a Band-Aid as fast as you can. Again, try to share a lawyer. Try to divide your assets up 50-50 as best you can and move on. Okay, and if it means that the other side gets a little bit more than you, so what? So what? In the big scheme of things, what does it matter? What, is someone out there keeping score? Is God going to send you a thank you note for fighting harder for your assets? What are you talking about? This is all going to seem so stupid to you when you look back on it later. Do not fight over stuff. Even if it's all the stuff. I'll be honest with you. If I got remarried, which I told you I'm not, and we ended up getting divorced without children, which is why I'm not going to get married, because I'm not going through that again, because it's silly. We're not going to have children. I'm 63 years old, and I'm not going to marry a cupcake. I'm not going to marry a 23-year-old girl. I'm going to, if I did get involved with another woman, it's going to be someone roughly my own age, which means, frankly, after menopause. So we're not going to have kids, and so anyway. But if you're getting divorced, what do you want? We'll fight this thing for 5 years when there's nothing involved but stuff? Really? Give them the stuff, even if you have to give it all away, frankly, to be honest with you. Just lay down and give it to them. Because in the end, it's just stuff. And it doesn't really matter. And you can always make more. If you have the talent to make the money, to earn the stuff to begin with, you have the exact same talent the day later. But you won't if you cloud yourself up full of bitterness and anger and rage fighting over a divorce that you shouldn't be fighting over. And that's my advice. Okay, so we've covered divorce with children or divorce without children, and that's going to be enough for today. Now, if you have follow-up questions, if I haven't covered your situation, if you want me to comment on your specific divorce, and I do this all the time, particularly in the Facebook groups that I deal in, listen, right above my head, it says My Other Dad, and then there's an 844 number for you to call. Call, which I don't memorize. I don't know why. I think the last 4 numbers are 0444. Is that right? Or 444? Anyway, it doesn't matter. Call the 844 number above my head. Or I should say text, call. Look, this is now you know I'm telling the truth when I say I'm 63. That was senility. Text that number above my head. Ask me anything you want. It's an anonymous question source. It allows me to communicate with you anonymously should I have any follow-ups, so I can give you a better answer, and I will help you as best I can. Because I am the dad you wish you had, your Uncle Herbie. And that's it for today. Thank you very, very much for joining me. I hope you got a lot out of this. And until next time, so long.